Hey,
Hey,
Guy, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Where are you right now? Are you in California?
No, I'm actually off the coast of Cornwall. I'm
Oh,
literally yeah, so quite a random location, but yeah, I'm in the Isles of Scilly currently at the moment. Just
that's awesome.
yeah,
Yes. So listen, we're here to talk about plastic surgery. So I watched it yesterday. I thought it was great. It's really impactful. It packs a big punch. There's a
amazing.
message behind it. So let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, nice to meet you. Uh, this is your directorial debut, so even though it's clearly not your first time on a movie set, we'll talk about that later. But what drove you to make the jump behind the camera on a short film that has such a strong message on how we are arting the planet and arting ourselves at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I've been working as an assistant director for so long, and I've always, been wanting to scratch the itch of actually directing myself. And so this was a project that has been in my brain for a long time. My sister used to work at the Ocean Agency, which is a not-for-profit agency, and kind of through them, I worked with them on a project called Glowing, Glowing Gone, and I did a campaign with them, and suddenly I was kind of exposed to this world, the horrors underneath the waves of what is happening, and I wanted to create a story and something which was really visual and vivid. And I watched this film by Denis Villeneuve, which is a short film that not many people have seen, called The Next Floor.
Yeah, I've
And
seen it. Sorry, I'm from Quebec, so
oh,
Denis Villeneuve is like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
is the god. So yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, yeah,
amazing, right? I mean,
yeah.
I watched that short film, and I knew that I wanted to create something which was almost quite kind of Black Mirror-esque in a way, where it has a message underneath something, and so that's kind of where plastic surgery was created, and yeah, so that was kind of my jump into the directing sphere. But yeah, so it's
Yeah, because yes, we follow a doctor, Dr. Terra, and it's her last day before she leaves for maternity. There's something important being said about the fact that she's about to bring someone on this planet and the patients she has to treat during her shift. So how this idea came to life? Like why specifically that story?
So that's really interesting, actually, that you say that, because basically I wrote the script originally as being kind of without dialogue. It was a full orchestra-driven story that was in a hospital setting where suddenly all the patients start showing up with plastic inside their bodies. And then I knew that I wanted to turn it into something which was more character-driven, and I wanted to follow a story of a protagonist and someone that was going through a journey within this extraordinary circumstance. And then I had watched Anna in a play, and I knew that she was someone that I wanted to work with.
Mhm.
So I approached her, and when we had our first call together, she told me that she was 6 months pregnant,
No way.
and that was where I was like, she basically said, would you be open to working with that? And then I rewrote the story based off that. So that was actually how the story developed, which was so beautiful because it was kind of as if she was destined to play the role. Because who better to represent Mother Nature than someone who's actually pregnant and about to give
Mhm.
life? So suddenly I rewrote the script. I started looking back at the character of Dr. Terra, and where we could start this story, and it started to give a lot of a lot of weight to this person that has got such a future ahead of them and being thrown into this world of chaos.
Mhm.
How do they adapt to that, and how how does that affect their choices that they end up making? And that's kind of how it developed naturally. And that, yeah, so it was an amazing process.
Well, it's interesting that she was pregnant. I didn't know that. I was gonna ask you
Yeah.
like, where did you meet her? So you can answer that question. So she was in a play, and you was like, okay, she's the one like for my for my short
Yeah.
film. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
nice.
Basically, I mean, basically, I'd obviously watched her in a lot of stuff, and I knew that she was an incredible actress, and
Mhm.
I've just been wanting to work with her for so long, and immediately from the start, she had got so involved in the story. We had a great chat where we were on a Zoom call for at least 2 hours, I think, chatting about the story and the character and how she really wanted to get involved with it, and so that was kind of how it developed, and yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the plastic in the body. So, well, I mean, I also write for horror website, so I immediately saw like the body horror influences behind it in your
Yeah,
short film, which I did not expect that was gonna happen. But was it
yeah.
important for you to get those elements, to get a reaction from the audience, to get your message heard, like just like to be as like
Yeah,
blatant like as possible? Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. I think something that I work with, we had an amazing prosthetics designer called Rebecca Wheeler,
Yeah.
who was fantastic. And we had kind of developed through the script that I wanted to have these patients that were basically seeping. I call them plastic patients,
Yeah.
basically. We had
Yeah.
10 of them in our hero ward, and I really wanted it to feel as if the plastic was coming from within them and it was kind of seeping out of their skin, almost like a disease. And that was the kind of feeling that I wanted to have, and that was very much influenced from my, growing up watching zombie horror and different type of disease horror. Things like Contagion or even The Last of Us recently, where you have the physical, toxic waste appearing and seeping
Mhm.
through the skin. That was something that was really fun to play with. So me and Rebecca started to create these designs. One of them, my favorite, being the throat gag. I don't know. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah, oh, yeah.
the one in Ewald,
Yeah, yeah,
which was one of my favorites because I wanted to watch, or I wanted to create this scene where it almost felt as if you saw the plastic going underneath the skin, as if it was like a snake eating prey.
yeah. Hmm.
And that kind of link of how these prosthetics and the design of it played into the practical nature of filming was very linked into how Mother Nature is in a way itself. So that was a really great collaboration. So the prosthetics nature was always something that was top on my list, practically making something in camera. So yeah, that was a joy to make. I loved
I
it.
think it's interesting because twice you've called Dr. Terra Mother Nature. I feel like you're not even hiding. Like the message is very obvious that she's kind of like representing the art by
Yeah,
itself, and she like by the end of it. Sorry, I was gonna spoil the ending, but like, by the end of it, it kind of says something about like how she's also being affected by everything and everyone's action around her. But you see, you talked about Rebecca Wheeler, and I mean, she did a fantastic job. Did you meet her before on a set, or is it someone you want to
yeah,
work again
yeah.
in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, so we worked on a film called A Matter of Minutes, which
Okay.
was a slick film, and I was again I was one of the assistant directors on it, and she did this amazing job creating the prosthetics for someone who's going through a reaction to this to a nut allergy, and it
Mm.
was an incredible prosthetic work that she did, and she did it in, I mean, literally what felt like minutes. She created this amazing design, and it was layered, so there was always a scale to which the disease, the reaction was taking place. And I just saw that level of detail that she puts into that work, and I wanted to bring her onto this project because I knew that she would be the right person that would be, that would work well with this, and especially because it's
Mhm.
so out of the box and different. It gives a lot of room for creativity, so it allowed us to really go to, different areas with it, and kind of come up with so many different ways in which plastic could be coming out of the body, and different items that we consume every day and that we interact with, and then how would that play in a physical form. So yeah, that was, yeah, so I met her on that job, and brought her onto plastic surgery.
Did you already had like all those gags? I'll put it like in the yeah, you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
was it always kind of like planned out, or you would discuss with her and it became a collaboration, and she put out her own ideas, or you always knew like there was going to be the throat gag, the one
Yeah.
from the butthole. Let's just tell it like it is. So was that always planned in your head?
Yeah, so I mean, all of the gags were basically scripted. The first three surgeries, which was the fork in the first surgery, then you had what was a clump of kind of PPE equipment, so it was
Mhm.
protective equipment, which I wanted to do because I kind of found it so ironic that the what's washing up on our shores today is what we use to protect ourselves
Mhm.
from disease anyway, which was masks, PPE equipment, syringes, gloves, surgical equipment that we use every day that's thrown away quite easily. And so that second surgery included that kind of clump of PPE, and then the third one was the throat gag with the bottle out through the
Mhm.
mouth. But then the hospital ward, which was the kind of, I mean, you could always look at it as kind of Dante's Inferno. It's that idea that we're kind of in hell in a way, and Dr. Terra kind of goes into that room and she witnesses this. And those were patients where we workshop those together. So those ones were all ideas that we just, we had an amazing collaboration on that because we just thought of all these different types of patients around the room,
Mhm.
and how would they be reacting to different areas of the body that, and
Hmm.
certain things that represented different areas. So if it was a throat, we had a six-pack ring because of what we drink. So it was all reference. It's all reference to
Yeah.
parts of the body that we would interact with that object. So it was all kind of thought out in that process. So yeah, that was fantastic to see that come together. And it's quite weird because when we were filming it, we filmed that on day three, which was probably it was our biggest day for prosthetics,
Hmm.
and we shot 44 shots or setups in one day.
Wow. Okay.
It was part kind of chaos within the nature of filmmaking because we transitioned into handheld. And so we started to look at a lot of these scenes as being very gritty, handheld in nature. So we were kind of going around the room and grabbing all these amazing pieces,
Mhm.
and that made that process very fluid. But yeah, so it was fantastic. It was
Yeah,
really
because
good.
there's this, you mentioned like the Dante's Inferno. There's this feeling of like a ticking time bomb with all the
Yes,
patients coming one after the other, especially knowing she's about to leave on matter to leave, and she's literally like almost about to walk out the door, and then she
yeah,
get called. Was it important for you to have like this sense of urgency? Like, did it influence the pacing of the film? Because the pacing is very important in what you're doing. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, pacing with something like this, it's so important to keep the pace going, especially in a short film where you have such limited time and you're constricted to tell a story within, I mean, I think the end up runtime is about 12 minutes.
Mm.
And so we really wanted to keep the pace up and keep the audience going through this moment so that when they really started to understand what was going on and realized that she herself has now become infected, that was such a big shock and a big, twist for the audience. And then when at the end of the film, I mean, I almost don't want to ruin it on the channel of what happens, but
Yeah.
where, it creates this shock and this element, and we built up that tension, which you can see also in the camera moves because we
Mhm.
start with very static camera, then we transition into very kind of steady movement with the steady cam, which we used in the 360 shot in the second surgery, and then we transitioned to handheld. So the pace of the film is set not only by the music, the performance, the camera work. That's what keeps our pace going, which I think is really crucial for a short like this.
It's like you've been like one step ahead every time because I was gonna literally ask you like the camera moves a lot, so every single shot feels like it's calculated and it's designed
Yeah,
in a way to feel that feeling of escalation. So what
yeah.
was your collaboration with your DP Elena Gonzalez and the camera department overall?
I mean, Helena was great. She's someone that, you know, she was basically up for doing anything, and we had such a great collaboration again together when she came on board. We worked with the storyboard together. We shortlisted the film. I then worked with a storyboard artist called Neil Maguire, who was brilliant, who storyboarded some of the Paddington films.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
he's fantastic. He's
Yes.
absolutely amazing, and it was such a joy to have that tool, because the storyboard for me was a really crucial thing. And Helena, we had the exact same, uh, you know, image for this. We had the same vision that what we wanted to create, and she brought a very freeing nature to this, where when we were trying to really get quite, where we were trying to be a bit more creative with some of the handheld scenes where I asked her to light it 360, which is not an easy feat. I
No.
basically said, we don't have, necessarily the time. These are quite complex scenes, but I can't basically go, set up to set up to set up and it be, a lighting change for everything. It had to be very fluid because I wanted to keep the actors in this constant kind of feeling of chaos,
Hmm.
especially as we went through the filming. And so her allowing us to be in that 360 lit nature meant we moved very quickly. So we were able to move around the room in these environments in a really quick way, which kept the actors on their toes. It kept us on our feet, and we were going from setup to setup. We kept in that kind of chaos feel of the film, which is exactly what we were trying to create. And she really did adhere to that, and so that was fantastic. And she worked great with the prosthetics that we were trying to light, the different skin tones and that we were trying to work with that were prosthetics, or So all of that was, yeah, it was a great collaboration. So I'm hoping that we'll work together very soon.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear, but it kind of feels like the star aligned in some way because you did have a lot of experience on movie sets in general. You work with the wonderful Wes Anderson on big
Yeah.
budget movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, Barbie, A Quiet Place Day One. So, I mean, how'd you bring that experience and your baggage into your role as a director? Like, did that help you in any way? Because clearly, like, you made a lot of contacts and it helped you like make this film.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 100%. It's a very good question. I think I always wanted to go into film, um, in an environment where I could watch these amazing people work, and I became an
Mhm,
assistant director because I loved working practically with actually filming something and working with the crew and the actors and the director and
mhm,
creating their vision. And I'd often watch. I mean, I started as Wes's assistant originally for a small amount of time, and then he allowed me to be on Asteroid City as one of the assistant directors,
mhm,
and then I kind of continued on from that with him, and I guess you get a front row seat into watching how these amazing people work, and the different methods that they have. With Wes, he was amazing because as I was talking about the storyboard, he would have an animated storyboard that would be available for the crew to watch, and that was an invaluable tool. It meant that everyone knew what they were doing at any given point. It just made everyone was in the know. And then you had other people like Greta Gerwig who very much likes to sit underneath the camera and watch the actors physically with their performance like you would on a theatre show. And then you have directors like Michael Sarnowski, who, when we did A Quiet Place, is amazing with actors, and he trusted his DP entirely, to light the space and build that space, and he would work with the actors and build that performance, and they worked in tandem together. So there's these amazing collaborations, and I think I took mostly from that was the collaborations that these people have with their producers, their DPs, their crew, and I took that on board, myself, and realized that this isn't me making a film, it's the crew making a film. You've got all these talented people from different departments that bringing so much. And if you fully trust people, and you get good people on board, then you begin to really, you can achieve some amazing things. And that's what I think I learned the most, was that you have to really trust the people around you, and don't be afraid to I guess it's, yeah, working with Wes particularly was my favorite experience, just because watching someone like him with actors and with the crew, and how he preps for something is really amazing. So yeah, that was kind of what I took forward.
Yeah, I didn't want to make it about West, but I had to ask. Otherwise, my uncle would have killed me. Like he's such a big fan. But how was it? Like, do you have another anecdote on set maybe with him? Then we'll move back from it. But I'm just curious, like, as you mentioned the animated storyboard, that was extremely insightful. But is this like something else you learned from him, or an anecdote you had on set with him?
I mean, I'd say with Asteroid City in particular, there was a day that we wrapped filming a scene which was in the actors class, in the 1950s. This was when it was kind of black and white. This was the present day bit in the
Okay.
1950s, and we were filming in this garlic factory, outside Chinchon, which was where Adam Stockhausen had built this set, for the writer's hut. And after we'd finished the day, we'd wrapped all the crew and we basically finished. And Wes had gone and taken the actors with him to Asteroid City, and he kind of just messaged the boom operator, the camera, and said, come on over to Asteroid City. We'll just shoot something. I think what I learned from that was that he was so freeing, and his where he felt most himself seemed to be when it was without all the politics of an actual scene. He used to just love being on the fly
Mhm.
and taking actors into a space in that kind of world. So I think the anecdote of that, where how he just would take them off to Asteroid City, I thought was so romantic, because they
That's
they
very
would just
cool.
jump on a golf buggy and ride over on into the desert of Asteroid and film a random scene, and we get a phone call being, so I think that was a magical part of it. And then, I think he also allowed us to be in the film. So I
Mhm.
was one of the acting class in the 1950s bit. which was quite funny. And then yeah, it was a magical time, magical
Yeah,
time.
there's no doubt you learn from that afterwards. Like, like in any sense of like what you're gonna do next, it does affect the way you're gonna deal with your actors and your set and your crew afterwards. But to go back on your visual, there's like this cold bluish color palette that's
Yeah.
predominant in plastic surgery. Also clash with some red, as we can see on the poster behind. But there's also the red phone, which remind me of the Batman series.
Oh
But even
yes, yeah.
the blood from the patient. So did you know like how the film was gonna look like from the start? Was it always clear in your head?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I find sometimes when I'm writing a project, if I know the project is right, is when I really start to visualize it. And for this, I always visualized from the beginning that it was going to start with this really slow kind of tracking shot, which kind
Mm-hmm.
of illuminates by this red phone, which is kind of this like almost kind of impending doom that was encroaching the story, and I just love the idea of this. And it's funny that you mentioned Batman because Batman was actually a reference for the intercom.
Okay.
Because I mean, I don't know if you've ever played the old Batman games and the
Yes.
Arkham Asylum and all these
Yes.
things.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
there was always an intercom that would chime before the Joker speaks,
Oh, do you need a motivational speech about now? Okay.
which was the dum da dum dum, which was this
Yes.
whole thing
Yes.
psychologically in my head that I
Yes.
would be like, Joker's about to speak. I'd feel quite scared or anxious with the mention of that chime. So I always wanted to make the chime. That was all inspired by the Batman games. And an intercom system that kind of drove the narrative of the story and taking these characters into each room, which was beautifully voiced by Daniel Ings. And yeah, so it was fantastic. And then yeah, I do visualize it, and it becomes a point where I have to get it down on paper or I have to draw it. So a lot of the times I would draw a lot of the shots and things, but it was a constant change, with the script and with everything, and with the 360 shot with the
Mm-hmm.
Steadicam. That for me was actually quite late in the process because I came to that scene and I thought I didn't want to create a. When you look at a scene like that in a surgery, you could look at the script and go, if you're trying to cover the coverage, it can become quite bitty and it can be quite difficult to cover the scene. And I kept thinking that I really wanted to build the tension, build momentum, but keep the audience in suspense. And I started looking I mean, obviously Christopher Nolan, who isn't a fan of Christopher Nolan, but he would use that 360 shot as
Mm-hmm.
as this kind of tension builder, which he used in Interstellar, he used in Tenet, and so I was trying to think how I can incorporate that into plastic surgery, and that
Mm-hmm.
was the perfect thing for that scene. So yeah, it was yeah, fantastic.
I feel it's kind of important because you mentioned the 360 shot from Nolan, and it's not something he's necessarily associated with. Like, let's just say, like, for example, Michael Bay in Bad Boys, it's clearly like obvious and it's
Yeah,
made with almost big fireworks behind it. So that's an
yeah,
approach.
yeah,
But it's also important sometimes to understand when to apply that shot in order to push the story forward. So I guess
yeah,
that's something that you nailed because I also wrote down a note for that 360 shot, but you already talked about it. You mentioned
yeah.
the impending doom right from the opening. There's this somber feeling, and part of this is the music from the composer, the talented Michael Lewin Barker. So was it something you discussed with him during the process, how to set the tone with the music?
Yes, yeah. So we Michael got on board and he's absolutely fantastic. I listened to some of his work that he did on What We Wish We Could Be, which was a short from Slick Films, which Luke Shelley directed, and Sophie Stacey was the producer of, who also produced Plastic Surgery.
Okay.
And so she introduced me to Michael, and so I already knew he was extremely talented, and I was really, really excited to work with him. And I kind of said to him that I wanted to create this feeling of an almost like an orchestra tuning or finding its tune mixed with this kind of 90s horror at the start of the film. And I had this long shot to build that up. So and then throughout the story, we had a great collaboration, and he created this amazing tune for the credits, which actually came first, I think. I think he wrote the credits
Okay.
first, which was brilliant. And then as the story developed, he just nailed it with all the scenes, and especially with the 360 shot.
So was
You know,
he was he composing as you were filming? Just wondering, or was it always done like afterward in post, or it went along as you were filming it?
so we were in touch before we started filming, and then he started playing with a few themes and stuff that we talked about. Because we talked about the different style that we wanted to go down, the kind of thriller aspect of the story, but we also wanted to have a very kind of light-hearted start, and then go into this tension building. And we just needed to keep this momentum. And the montage sequence, which becomes before the hospital ward, was meant to be this really chaotic sequence. So he adds so many. I mean, there's so much sound design alone in that as well, because we
Mhm.
had all of the intercom chimes going on, the intercom from Daniel. We had the cast, which had off lines throughout different. We had all the sound.
The wheels rolling on the
We had
floor, all those little
wheels,
details. Yeah,
and we
yeah, yeah.
had the plastic. I had this constant thing with Michael actually as well, where I asked him, I sent him a voice note, I think, which is where I had this plastic bottle and I scrunched it up, and I wanted to, like, I sent it to him and I was like, I really want to use this sound effect of this crunching bottle. And you'll find that again throughout the film. So it's all these, again, it was a constant voice note here, voice note back. Oh, here's this theme, or here's this song. And actually Interstellar was another musical reference for the moment of realization where Dr. Terra sees the wound in her hand, and she makes that decision to save herself,
Hmm.
and run into that room, and lock the doors, find the syringe, begin to about to cut it out and try and save herself. And that was the music behind that was all kind of inspired by the docking scene in Interstellar, where he's making that conscious decision to save him and save her. He's saving them because it's necessary. It has to be done. Like, that's what she needs to do to survive. And I loved the build and pace in that moment, and how beautiful the music is. So Michael really nailed that as well.
You did,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a real collaboration.
Yeah, that was fantastic, and I won't take any more of your time. But I was wondering what's next for Nice Guy Pictures, because you clearly have a mission
Yeah.
to educate people to your films. Are you working on something right now?
So I'm actually working on a animation, which is really exciting.
Hmm.
It's a short animation called Haven, which is set 100 years after the 1991 oil tanker disaster of the MT Haven.
Hmm.
So it's a yeah, it's another environmental kind of thriller animation, which is set 100 years after this disaster happens, and it follows a team of divers who are canvassing the wreckage 100 years later. So this would now be in 2091. And we follow the story of this one particular diver who gets separated from the others and is saved by a little fish who guides them back to the ship and shows the diver their home, which is the last coral. But then we realize things escalate when the other divers follow them to the coral and realize that the coral lies on the last cache of the Empty Haven's cargo hold of oil drums. So to
Hmm.
remove the oil drums, to salvage them, would mean destroying the coral. So it's this kind of, again, it's another moral dilemma. It's all about Mother Nature, the vulnerability and fragility of Mother Nature in this futuristic world. And it follows the connection between this diver and this little fish, and it's really beautiful, and it was all inspired by Flow, actually.
Oh my God,
Is
that a masterpiece!
amazing.
It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece.
Oh,
Yeah.
I watched that, and I always had in my mind a story about a diver and a little fish,
Hmm.
because I try and dive myself, and I've just been blown away by the underwater world. And but it took me watching Flow to really understand what I could try and create.
Hmm.
So it really inspired me to write this story. It's fully underwater, and very much score driven, like
Hmm.
Flow is.
Hmm.
Gesture, it's all these visual performance driven, which is exactly what I want to try and create. So I'm currently developing that as my next project.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to see the animation style, and also like, you keep doing those films that have like an environmental kind of subtext to it. You ever watch Soylent Green with Charlton Heston?
No, I haven't. No.
I would suggest that. Put that on your list. So yeah.
Okay, I'll put it on the list. I'll put it on the
Perfect.
list.
So I'll leave you there, Guy. So nice to meet you, and I'm looking forward to see what you do next. And great job once again with your short film.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank
Have
you
a good
so
one.
much. Thank you. See you in a bit.
Thanks. Thanks.